Hi everybody, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm here with the Griff. Wait there, Reid. Do I pronounce the F Reid Shippen or is it Reid Shippen?
I go by Reid, but I didn't pick that name, so off it goes. It's on a lot of credits as F Reid Shippen, but
Right.
I'll answer F if you want to call me that.
I actually worked with an artist about 15 years ago, and I'm not joking, whose name was F. I don't think that was his name, but that was his artist name was F.
Really?
So maybe you started something, I don't know.
I knew about E.
Oh, right. E.
Yeah, the guy from the Eels, but yeah. No, you know what? It was just a first initial and it stuck and here we are. But yeah, my name's Reid.
That's wonderful. So you're in, where are you at the moment?
I'm in my studio in Nashville.
Wonderful. What part of Nashville, if you don't mind me asking?
It's just south of city center. It's in a place called Green Hills.
Oh, beautiful. Whenever I go to Nashville, it does sort of remind me, strangely enough, of England, where I grew up. Because I grew up in a small village and you had to go through fields to get to my school and everything. And Nashville has a kind of a big, what do they call it? Little big city or something? What's the phrase?
Yeah, it's a town, really, honestly.
Yeah, which is a little bit like LA, frankly. It's like this big sprawling metropolis.
Yeah.
You know, there's downtown in LA, but it's not New York, you know. It's just this big sprawling metropolis.
Nothing's New York.
No, nothing is. Well, it's wonderful. We've worked together, which is fantastic, and how I got to meet you. Your credits are outstanding, and very eclectic. I like that.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked to a couple of people about this, and I feel like it's the present and the future. You know, that it's those days of these enormous budgets where they looked around and went, "Oh, we're doing a Icelandic death metal with a funk edge. That guy's the mixer." You know, now it's a good thing because it gets to be so much more fun because we can embrace so many different genres.
Yeah.
Hey, so tell me a little bit about your journey. What was your journey? I don't know anything about your background. How did you end up being this incredible mixer, which, quite frankly, at the moment, you're pretty on fire. You've mixed a lot of stuff that I'm hearing on the radio, which is fantastic. Didn't you just work with Steven?
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Guy's an amazing singer.
Oh, I know. I did 9 months with him, so I
Yeah, I know you did. Like, it's you sometimes forget that there are people who are rock stars for a reason. And then you listen to his raw vocal and you're just like, man, guy's amazing. Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's fantastic. What I loved about recording him is that he self-comps. So what I would do is I'd throw up, he was great on a 47. In fact, actually, most of the vocals we did on a 48, but basically the same thing. So we would do a vocal, we'd sing a verse, and we'd maybe be on the third line of the verse, and he'd stop, and he'd go, I need to punch in this word. And then he'd punch in the word, and then he'd keep singing. And then we'd hit the chorus, and he'd sing like 3 lines of the chorus, and he'd like stop, and he'd fix a couple of words in the chorus and keep going. And basically, by the end of about 45 minutes, you had one take that was already comped.
Wow.
That's
a dream.
That's a dream, yeah. Because look, I say this all the time, and there's no substitute for acquired experience. And when you've got a guy that's been making albums and great albums for 45 years, and he's worked with Jack Douglas, on a whole bunch of incredible records. He worked with so many different producers that have probably beaten him up in different ways. That he's got all that acquired knowledge plus all that live experience, and you're right. So when you get a vocal like that, you're probably just pulling it up, and it's incredible because he's bringing all of that to it.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and it's a privilege to get to work with people like that because you just can't mix a great vocal. Like, it has to be on there great.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I presume, like in everything that Steven does, he came down and hung out with you, yes?
No, he didn't actually.
Oh, he didn't?
On this song. No. Mm-mm.
Oh.
No, we just did it via email. I don't know whether he was in LA at the time or not. He wasn't here.
He must have been, because I'm telling you, this guy has his fingers in everything. He does. He must have just not been a bit available. Well, I hope that you guys keep mixing together because he will come down, and I'd love
to meet him.
Yeah, it's a fun experience. So, tell me about mixing that song. Let's sort of go through your process of what it was like to mix it.
Well, let me see. It was a while ago. It was a different version of Janie's Got a Gun.
Wow.
It was really like creepy and ambient and like minor and dark, and so it was really fun to kind of like you said, you don't have to mess with his vocal much at all, but it was fun to just kind of make spaces and use some old like plate verbs or spring verbs to make some weird, color and stuff like that, because there was a lot of room in the track, which is also nice.
It was fantastic, and I believe it's for his foundation, yes, for women that are going through abuse and stuff like that. I think actually they put it out as a single to help promote that foundation, which I think was fantastic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You actually more than I do.
I'd read about it, and then I saw that you were working on it, and I was very excited, and I thought, well, this is great. We can talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So it's great that you're sort of crossing over and doing all of this rock stuff, but of course, most people are going to know you probably a little bit more from the country world.
Yeah, for the last couple of years, country's been really good to me. And
what are you working on at the moment?
Actually, like as of right now, we're finishing Dierks Bentley and Kenny Chesney and Jake Owen.
Wow.
Yeah, that's for as far as country goes. That's about it right now.
Well, those are three big names to be just finishing up. So
yeah, and they're great guys too. They're really good to work with.
What's the process like in Nashville? Did the artists like to come down and hang out in the control room with you, or just for recalls?
It really depends. Usually, what I do is I'll mix and do whatever I hear, and I'll send it out. Like, say for Kenny and Buddy, the producer, like I'll send it out to them, and then Kenny will come over some morning early, and we'll just try some stuff for 45 minutes to an hour, like tweak a few things, and then he'll go away, and maybe 2 or 3 days later he'll be back to try something else, or a different vocal in here, just kind of like he likes to tweak. He likes to really dig in and be particular about certain things. But it's super easy. I mean, he's a joy to work with. Like, he knows exactly what he wants. He's very pro, very good hang. Like, it's great.
That's wonderful. Now, are you printing a lot of stuff back into Pro Tools so that when you're doing recalls, it's just infinitely faster, or are you finding you're having to recall all the console completely, or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle, but the way my setup is, I can literally just knock through songs like instantly. Some stuff is running live, some stuff that I'll do processing to, I'll print.
Right.
But my setup is set up in such a way that anything I'm listening to whatever the final print, so to speak, is going to be. So I'm making sure that it's not. Back in the day, I used to print stems, and then it would come back a little bit different, and that would kind of drive me crazy. So I figured out a way to make sure that it comes back fast. So on a record like that, we'll sit and go through 5 or 6 songs in like an hour and a half.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I wish I've got to start getting a little smarter in my setup, because that doesn't work like that for me. I'm still recalling. I'm using a lot of console automation still. It depends. But what I find actually recently, I've been doing a little bit more mixing in the box primarily, and then using the console specifically for other reasons. But that's really good, because most experience with people with SSLs is we're spending a long time recalling and turning every single button and pressing every single thing. But that's wonderful. Excuse me. Now, Can I ask you some little tips and tricks that maybe you do that you don't mind revealing, so people can kind of get an inside of things?
Sure. I don't think there are any like secrets.
Exactly. I feel the same way.
So yeah, what would you like to know?
Well, I do know that you do some fun stuff on the master bus, because we talked about this. If you're fine with sharing some of that, I think that would be good.
Yes, I do some weird stuff on the master bus. Right now, my 2 mix is running through a Dangerous Liaison, which is also one of the best product names ever.
It is.
Hysterical, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here looking at it right now. That allows you to pop in different inserts.
Yep.
And it also allows you to do like a parallel insert, which is really cool. So depending on the project, I've got a little tiny bit of like EQ, like a Moog EQ for a little bit of top and a little bit of bottom, just overall. And I'm running through some like API line drivers just for a little bit of color at Unity. And I've got a pair of old Western Electric transformers that I can pop in and out for tone.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And then the crazy thing that I've been experimenting with is I have an old Ampex MX10 tube mixer. I'm running that through online in parallel and then blending a little tiny bit of that back in, and it just gives a weird like mid-range urgency, Great. So that's a fun color to be able to have. And the beauty about the Dangerous is you can just pop them in and out, like see what's best for the song, and like there you go. Yeah. So that's really fun.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I think it was the Ampex that you were telling me about on the phone. That being able to put in that energy and just all those additional second, third crazy harmonics, and presumably more transformers, so even more weight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I got to experiment with some stuff like that. On my master bus, I've got some Pultecs on it, but I'm mainly using the SSL bus compressor. But when you told me about that, it made me start thinking.
Yeah, well, I'm mainly using the SSL bus compressor too, and then my SSL goes out through a pair of Pultecs and a Red 3. Like anything coming off the SSL mix bus is going to go through that. It's been going through that for years.
Oh wow! So the Red 3, the same that CLA uses.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think we all started using that because he was talking about it, but it really does. It sounds great, and the needles are like barely moving.
Yeah.
So it's just a color. It's a nice little tonality.
Now they're not making it anymore, are they? Didn't they stop making it? I can't. Well, they started making it again. I remember trying to buy one a couple of years ago, and they're like, "Oh, we don't make that." And I'm like, "But it's the thing that we're all talking about, and everybody wants."
Isn't that par for the course?
Yes, it is par for the course. Yes.
Well, I think I got an extra one. You want to borrow it and try it?
I do.
Cool.
I got that on camera.
Yeah, that's all right. Man, my gear's all over this town.
Right. Well, it's a little further away if we ship it out to Los Angeles out here.
Yeah, that's all good.
So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you end up being this amazing mixer and where are you from? I mean, where were you born? I don't know any of you.
I grew up in New Jersey, just south of New York City,
right.
Which was a really nice place to grow up, a tiny little town. And then when I hit college, I was thinking about doing like electrical engineering or business, and just a little bit into that, discovered that I would rather be inspired and poor than bored and secure, Right. So I'd always been interested. I mean, I grew up playing in bands and singing and singing at church and doing theater stuff and, all kinds of stuff, but I never really considered myself a musician. I mean, you're a musician. I'm a drum owner. There are drummers and there are drum owners. So I'm a drum owner, especially in Nashville. But anyway, I was always kind of curious about recording. So literally, like first year of college, I quit and went down to MTSU, which was the only recording school I could afford, and worked full time and went to school full time, and got a degree in recording and business.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But and then I got to do probably what you got to do, which is something a lot of people don't have an opportunity to do now. Is I did the internship and then the assisting and then engineering, and then I got into mixing early somehow. I got lucky, honestly.
And where was that? Where were those studios that you were working in?
It was all over Nashville. A bunch of studios in Nashville: Salt Mine, October, Soundstage, Omni, Quad, like all these places down here.
Oh wow! So you went for the ringer and.
Yeah. No, I did the whole assisting thing, like 16-hour days, 7 days a week for years, and full on.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh well, my journey was as a musician, so I had like record deals and touring, and then I come home and I had home studios. I went through ADATs, Pro Tools, right. the whole kind of thing. Plus in England, I always had studios, but always from the point of view of like I was that annoying guy in the band that you probably have to deal with, who's sort of tapping you on the shoulder, going, "Why'd you do that? What's that? How does that work?"
I love those guys.
I know. I do now because I see myself whenever there's like the bass player in the band and he wants to know why I'm doing something. I take a deep breath and realize I used to be that guy. Yeah, I was that guy that was asking all the quote-unquote dumb questions. Of course, there's no such thing as a dumb question, but...
No, why is good.
Yeah.
The just turn my instrument up, will you? Those I can do without.
The band notes where the drummer wants to be louder, the bass player. Yeah, exactly. My favorite one when doing rock is always, and I tease drummers about this all the time, the drummers will want the John Bonham big open drum sound, but the guitar player also wants a wall of Metallica death rock kind of guitars. And you ask them where in the world these two things live at the same time, you know. How can we have this huge ambience and air and also have chunky, massive guitars? But, you know.
And then they look at you like you're crazy and they say, just make it work.
Just make it work. And you do. You find a compromise. You have to shave a bit off here and you shave a bit off there. But, yes, exactly. I was just talking about in a video about, you know, how to inspire our musicians. I always think it's funny. I'm sure you do the same thing. Even if somebody asks you maybe to do something in a mix that you know is probably not going to work, it's easier sometimes to just show them that in 30 seconds than it is to sit there and debate them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, mixing is a service industry. Like, it's not my record, it's your record. And
absolutely,
you know, I want you to love it. So you have to push me pretty far into suck for me to start saying that is a really bad idea. You know, like, there is a point, obviously, when it's our job as mix guys to say, dude, you're not going to like that. Trust me. And sometimes they don't listen, and that's fine. I'll just print what I wanted to, and 3 days later we'll go back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. The one I was talking to Shelly Yakus about this, and you know, when people give you really serious, tiny detail stuff, and they go backwards and forwards on it, and maybe recall 3, they'll say, "Is it better?" And Shelley says he always looks and goes, "No, but it's different."
Yeah, good answer. Good answer. Yeah, I had a guy one time turn me in stuff to mix, and he wrote down on a legal pad the names of all the tracks and where they should all be panned. And I gave him the pad back, said, "Just write down the levels, man, and we'll be done."
Michael Brower will go, "Show me." I've saw him. Somebody was like, in a band I was working with, was like going, "I want to do this, this, and this," and he just like put it into a mode where you could write and went, "Show me how you want to do it." And they got really, really nervous, and it felt uncomfortable for a second. But then the guy grabbed the fader and pushed it up a little bit, and pushed it down and pushed it up where he wanted it, and you know, he just wrote the automation, and he goes, "Yeah, that sounds good, thanks."
That's cool.
And it wasn't like a passive-aggressive thing. He was literally saying, "Show me what you want to do. Here you go." And it was a good moment, because for a second we're all like, "Oh my God, that's terrifying. An artist is going to touch the console," you know. But the thing was, it was better. And yeah, sometimes doing what we do, you physically have something demonstrated. I'm sure. For me, at least, I've had, when people are trying to explain a concept of how they want a relationship to work, I will say, "Do you have a sonic example of that?" And it's nothing better than just to pop in a CD and go, "Like this." You're like, now I understand you.
Yes. So much better, and so much better to do that on the front end.
Yeah.
You know, because every once in a while you do that on the back end, and you're just like, if you had just told me that that's what you were looking for, I would have gone that direction.
Yeah.
So that's a really good method of communication. I love to ask people, especially people I don't know, do you have a reference? Do you have a vibe that you were going for? Like, what's inspiring you? And, you know, and just kind of try and get into their headspace.
And I like when we worked, because you sent me the tracks first as the producer. And so before we gave them to the artist, it was like at least 75% of the way there, you know, with the vision. You know, the artists are always going to have their detailed stuff. And it, you know, and sometimes we can be wrong, but at least we can, you know, between us get something which is close enough for them to be able to hear.
Yeah.
I do like that process a lot. And I personally, and I know from working with you, I really believe in collaboration.
Me too.
Yeah, it's, even with these days, increasingly, I like the A&R guy getting far more involved than you would think traditionally, because I feel like, because there's not the money flying around like there used to be with these huge budgets and paydays, and you know, nobody's making millions of dollars every time a song comes out, at least not the way they were in the 90s, that now it really is, labels don't put something out anymore unless they're really going to stand behind it. which is, I think, a wonderful world to be in, because they put out an album, and if it's actually going to come out, it's going to cost them money to promote it. So now, you know, it's not that us and them situation. That A&R guy wants it to be successful, or else he's not going to have a job. Where before it was, at least for me on a musician standpoint, I used to watch albums in bands I was working with or in, just sort of come out and disappear. I don't see that as happening as much. Obviously it does happen because the great American public may not buy the record, but I do like it because now what I feel like is if they're even going to bother releasing it, they are going to put some time and energy into it.
Right.
It's a good world for that, for me at least. So having the record company be involved it's different, I should say. So do you find that my long question is, do you find that you're increasing increasing the sort of scope of people that are now involved in the mixes?
It depends, but I find that the best projects are always the ones that are collaborative.
Definitely.
The people who can get past whatever ego or insecurity that they're dealing with and just say, okay, look, we're all professionals. We know exactly what we're doing. Let's make this as great as possible. That always turns out the best.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and you and I, I'm sure we've been on projects where it's not like that, and everyone's kind of scared and everyone's kind of, you know, insecure, and everyone gets making decisions out of fear just isn't a really good place to be in.
Yeah, I agree, and that's where you get sometimes, especially artists have had long careers, and they're trying to incorporate crazy little genre choices because they want to be relevant, and sometimes they sound less relevant because of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, who knows? The thing that really kind of kicked me into the country music field was this band called Little Big Town, and we did a record that was way outside of the normal for them, and we tracked it in 3.5 days, all live.
Wonderful.
10 days later, we were done with the entire record, and they sang it all live on the floor, and they killed it. And it really kind of blew the doors open for them, and it did really, really well. But they were taking risks, and I think they were taking risks because they figured, well, this may be our last shot, so let's just swing for the fences.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love to hear that, because I feel like we all know that the technology that's available to us now, to anybody, you know, from a laptop and a basic DAW, is that we can fix, time, tune anything.
Yeah.
And make anything sound amazing, you know, quote unquote amazing. But that, what you're talking about, is still absolutely special, you know, where you can just throw up a couple of mics and it becomes about the performance and about the artist.
Yeah.
And my hope is that starts to come back, at least. I mean, it's there in country. Obviously, Chris Stapleton, huge album, lots of nominations, a couple of Grammy wins. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff now starting to seep through. My hope is that the pop world, which has been so stagnant and stale for the last 15 years, I'm just hoping that can creep in there. Obviously, Adele really helps that out, you know, because she is a real singer, and you don't listen to tons of tuning and timing on her vocal. You hear performances. My hope is that keeps growing.
Yeah, and it's genre dependent. I mean, I thought Justin Bieber record was freaking amazing. I thought they did a killer pop record. That was great. And that's that whole other thing, which is fine because that's what that music calls for. So to each his own, I suppose. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's always been that world. For every Beatles, there was sort of comedy records in the 60s and kind of, you know, bad crooners as well as talented people. So I think it's always important to remember that, because we look back, and at least I do, I look back and I see the 60s and the 70s, and you see all the big stars and the legends, and then you forget that, there was still I'm not going to mention any bad 60s bands, that would be insulting, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally.
For every Beatles, there was a band that wasn't quite the Beatles. So you're busy as all heck. You've got work coming out of your ears, but you still find time to track as well as mix. That's exciting.
Yeah, that was something that I didn't do for a long time, and then I actually did it on that Little Big Town record, and it was so much fun that I was like, okay, well, let's do this. I generally don't end up tracking anything that I wouldn't be mixing anyway.
Right.
And I generally don't advertise for it. Like I'm not, if somebody randomly calls me and says, hey, let's track a record, it's probably not going to happen. I do it for people that I know and like, and, we have fun in the studio, but it's fun and it makes you a better mixer.
Yeah, absolutely. You find that you're doing, well, there's a lot, I've been having a lot of discussion with engineers and producers, and specifically mixers, where they've been saying they're seeing a lot less commitment in sounds.
I love that.
Say again?
I love that.
You love that?
Oh, yeah.
So for you, what does that mean?
That means painting myself into a corner on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it changes the way everybody's playing.
Yeah.
I love bringing like my mini Moog into the studio and running all the drums through that and feeding that to the drummer. And then they start playing different because it sounds like a hip hop loop instead of a regular drum kit. I love trying different things. In fact, the thing that's on my desk right now is this local band that I tracked, and we did it all on 2-inch, all live. And I did the what's the drum mic? I keep wanting to say Valgray, but it's not Valgray.
The Glenn Johns 3 mics?
Glenn Johns, yeah, the Glenn Johns thing. And it was it sounded fantastic. It was like great. I was like, all right, cool. Well, I hope it still sounds good when I get to mix because I don't have any other options here.
Yeah.
But I love doing that. It's really fun to influence the way people are playing by giving them different sounds and different creativity in the headphones, and kind of like pushing them to do something different and finding a great tone and committing to it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, a lot of the mixers have been lamenting the fact that they're getting the opposite, that they're getting so many tracks that it's hard for them to see what the vision was. Whether, and maybe there wasn't a vision. Maybe it was just keep tracking until you stop.
Well, I can see a lot of people being cautious. Mm-hmm. When I track drums, except for this project, I'll track tons of microphones. In fact, I'll track probably 3 different setups. One that's kind of hi-fi, one that's kind of throwback, and then one that's kind of affected and dirty. And just by moving a couple of groups, I can have like 3 different drum sounds instantly. You wouldn't want to use all of those in the mix, but since I'm mixing it, I know what's going to work on whatever song or whatever. So I like having the option.
Yeah, absolutely. I find a similar thing when I can. In my drum room, it's pretty tiny. Do you have a drum room there?
I don't actually. My room's only a mix room. We'll track at studios around town.
Do you have a favorite room?
For drums, it's Sound Emporium or Ocean Way or Blackbird D.
Right. I've not worked at Ocean Way, but I have worked at the other 2. Blackbird, of course, Studio D is a pretty famous drum sound.
It is. It's great.
Yeah. That little, what do you call it, the sort of room between the control room. Yeah, the chamber, you just throw up the mic and everything, yeah. That's pretty crazy. Just crack the door and instant...
Mm-hmm.
Who made the drum sound famous to the general public? Probably Jakir with what are they called? What's like the biggest selling rock? Thanks.
Kings of Leon.
Can you believe I couldn't even remember Kings of Leon?
Sorry, Jakir. We love you.
Yeah. Well, we remembered him. It was the band I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and that legacy. It's a great sounding console.
It is.
So it adds a lot to the sound. Blackbird, for those people that haven't been to Nashville and don't know the studio, is, I wouldn't even say arguably, is the best equipped studio on the planet.
Yep.
It has about 10 recording studios worth of equipment in one room.
Yeah. It's an embarrassment of riches as far as music gear goes.
The first time I was ever there was many, many years ago, 10 years ago with the Fray, and I remember they'd stopped on tour in Nashville for a couple of days, and we had to record like an EP and some Christmas songs. So I flew in for a day. It was like one of those load in at 7:30 a.m., try to be done by 5 because they're driving off situations. And I remember, I'm trying to record and mix all at the same time. And I was like, oh, the Fairchild seems like it's slightly imbalanced. The 670 is like slightly imbalanced. What can we do about that? The calibration seems slightly off, and the guy just sort of disappears, and literally a minute and a half later just rolls in another 670. and this is 10 years ago. And so I turned to him and I was like, oh, well, how many of these do you have? And he goes, I think we have 27 channels of Fairchild. And I was just like, what?
Yeah, totally.
And not to mention, just hanging on the walls are just like these beautiful guitars. Like you just go and pick up like a 50s Gibson acoustic. That's just hanging on the wall for you to strum on.
Yeah.
You know, which...
Yeah, John's crazy. And it's awesome. It's a great playground.
Oh, it's a great playground. It'll be a great...
I'm probably the only guy in Nashville that goes to Blackbird and brings gear.
You probably are. But, yeah, well, for me, flying in, I mean, these days there's no budget to fly in racks for
right.
But what do you bring then? Okay, now you throw yourself under the bus. If you go in there and you bring in stuff, what are you bringing in?
I'm bringing in weird stuff like RCA tube preamps and a bunch of, well, I mean, Blackbird's got a bunch of ribbon microphones, but I've got some weird microphones, Sankins and my favorite 48 and stuff like that. Weird compressors like old Altec 124s and just stuff just bizarre stuff. Vocal stressor, fun stuff that they don't necessarily have.
Right, the more eclectic stuff that you know how you're going to use it and where you're going to use it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and then guitar pedals and the Moog and weird filters and stuff like that.
Wonderful. Well, it's that individuality and your understanding of your eclectic gear is what gives you your stuff unique sound.
I hope so.
No, I mean I know so. I've worked with you. I think that's what's great about what we do is I have this like academy side of this Produce Like a Pro. So what I've been finding in that is I do like a Feedback Friday thing where people send in mixes and it's I don't know if you've ever been in a situation. What these are songs I produced and engineered, and then I hear like loads of different people put their own spins on it. And what I am finding is you get some really amazing technical mixes, and then you get some mixes that technically, there's maybe an issue with bottom end blowing out here and there, or top end being too. But then there's some of those guys and girls that are like doing some of the most insane kind of panning, twisted, distorted, and I'm just like, what I'm enjoying is like I'm seeing like if you just can pull those two worlds together, you can encourage the creativity in them, but give them the technical skills. There's actually some amazing talent out there because...
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think for mixing, a lot of the time, people concentrate on mixing things really well. And what I mean by that is making sure it's all loud, all crunchy, all audible, all this and all that. And yet all of the stuff that we gravitate towards, when we're kids, wasn't that way. It was just like, it was the insanity of just like, oh, wow, listen to that massive, slightly distorted drum sound. Not that we could articulate that, but that's what we were hearing. We weren't hearing like a hi-fi, absolutely perfectly produced thing.
Yeah.
So I think that creativity and that twist and the eclectic choices of equipment are important because they're your own individual stamp and they bring, an edge to something.
Yeah, mixing is all about emotion. Like that's how I connect with music anyway, and I think that's how most people connect with music. So I'd rather have a technically imperfect mix that feels great than a technically perfect mix that's boring.
Yeah, absolutely. I've used it many times before, but I use the analogy of Raw Power by Iggy Pop. When that first guitar solo comes in on Search and Destroy, it's probably, and I'm not exaggerating, 6 dB too loud. It just and the whole track almost pumps and disappears. But you got a pair of headphones on, you've got it turned up, and suddenly like this guitar solo is ripping your head off. But there's nothing more punk rock than a really loud, obnoxious guitar solo blowing everything out. And I just remember being a little kid when I first heard it. It was like, what is wrong with this? But at the same time, what's right with this?
Yeah. Well, when I got to work with Lillywhite, we of course like lobbied hard for U2 stories. And one thing that he said on that, what was that one track? Vertigo?
Yes.
That has a guitar all the way on one side. he said that when he was working on that, he had the guitar all the way on the left, and then he started worrying about whether people with headphones, that was going to bother them or what have you. And, he kind of put it back in the middle and balanced the mix so it was kind of more uniform. And he said the band came in and they were like, well, if you're going to do it like that, we don't even want to do the song, man. It was so much cooler before. And that's when he realized, like, do something wrong because it makes it interesting.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
Which is great. And, I mean, the revision process that we do now can tend to homogenize mixes. I mean, sometimes you get somebody who just won't let go and you're doing, I mean, I rarely do more than like 3 revisions of a mix, but sometimes you go like 10 or 12. And at some point you just start to realize how it doesn't matter. Like it's just all the cool stuff's getting homogenized out.
Yeah.
And that's a temptation because people can sit there and just listen over and over and over and over and keep changing and keep changing and keep changing. So you got to be on guard.
Yeah, and it depends on the artist. I had an artist that we hired. We hired Kenny Aronoff to play drums, and we went into Sunset Sound and did basic tracking. And what could be better? Yeah. And we tracked this record, and then they had comments about guitars, so we did the guitars. I'm like, great, they're all happy. And then it was change the vocal sound. And then it was change the drum sound. But not just change the drum sound. Like, I'm not going to mention which band it was, but there was another band as a reference, which was like diametrically opposed to the sound of Sunset Sound and a drummer as amazing as Kenny. And it just ended up sounding like a whole bunch of drum samples. I mean, maybe nicely blended drum samples, but what is the point of using Kenny Aronoff or any great drummer, not just Kenny, any great drummer in a great room? Obviously, we do blend samples, and blending samples, as you know, and you probably do as well, can enhance an already amazing sound. But when it becomes just the kick and snare sample, because the artist or whoever it is has changed their opinion on the drum sound, I just was like, okay, I mean, now it's lost all kind of guttural, natural performance that Kenny brought to it, So I hear you. But that was, again, same thing. That was over like 3 weeks. From finished mix to end mix, 3 weeks of, not every day, but every 4 or 5 days, a comment that was quite drastic from one to another. And I remember as an artist, I made a record with Don Smith, who's an incredibly talented producer and engineer. I'm sure you knew his work from Keith Richards and Tom Petty and the Stones and Traveling Wilburys. He was the engineer and mixer on all of those Traveling Wilburys records. So incredibly talented guy. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago. And his process was just, it was definitely capture everything, present it in a beautiful performance. He was obviously an amazing mixer. But I remember going backwards and forwards with him on a record I made as an artist and having really emotional attachments to these little details. And then maybe 2 years later, putting the record on, and I didn't remember any of the issues that I had. And that's good for me, and I'm sure for you as a drummer, you also have that perspective as what it's like to be a musician. So it's good because it gives us an understanding where we can, I wouldn't say placate, but we know that that's part of the process. Because I've said to a lot of people that I'm fine with the detail to an extent, because if it means them adjusting the hi-hat in 3 different mixes means that when they walk into an office and put the CD down or send the MP3 in an email, whatever it is, if it means that they are more connected with it and love it more, then I'm fine with that. It's just always a balance. I mean, obviously what you've got is a lot of years of acquired experience where you know how to indulge, but then know how to draw the line and go, look, guys, now it's no different.
Yeah, and hopefully that works. We need to get your studio set up so you don't have to kill yourself doing recalls when you have to change that one little thing.
Off camera, I might have to ask you about 10,000 questions of how you do it. Okay. So what do you, tell me a little bit about your setup over there.
Well, like you, I see a 4,000 in the background, so
yeah,
that's actually what the should be just, yeah.
There it is.
That's what we're sitting the laptop on, which is probably all too common nowadays.
Yep.
48 input, 4000 EG, a bunch of vintage outboard gear, a really big Pro Tools system, just lots of options.
Fantastic. Yeah, and the reason why I ask is because you're wearing your Atomic hat.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, you tell me a little bit about this. Look, I'll give a quick bit of background. My SSL, as you know, as an SSL owner, is a wonderful thing, and I love it dearly. But I don't like my electricity bills. And one of the things about my electricity bill is that the power supply needs its own air conditioning just to be able to work. So how long ago was it that you decided that you wanted to do something about that issue?
Well, I wanted to have my own studio for a long time and was kind of always working toward that. So about 6 years ago, I got a chance to build it, and I was going to have an SSL in it, obviously. And then, I didn't realize until I owned my own studio how much paranoia I was avoiding by not worrying about all the things that studio owners worry about when I was working in someone else's studio.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it became like, I'm at home and there's a massive thunderstorm going on. And I'm like, oh my God, is the console going to be dead when I walk in tomorrow morning? This, that, and the other thing. So the weak point, in my opinion, in the SSL consoles is always the power supplies. That's the thing that always seems to be giving you issues and causing issues on the desk.
Yep.
So I just started thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. I can't believe that no one's figured that out yet, and went looking and found a guy, a tech who was a mutual friend of mine in Collins, who's the engineer for the Black Keys, up in Detroit. And he said, well, I think there's a way to do this. And everybody said that it's not possible. And we just kind of started kicking back ideas back and forth. And he's the genius designer guy. I'm just the guy that's like, well, it needs to do this, and it needs to do this, and it needs to do that. And, so we built a lot of fun stuff in it. Like, it'll ramp the power on and off slowly, so you don't have to climb under and turn the buckets off. And it doesn't make the gates mess up, and it doesn't blow components when you turn it on. And, it can tolerate brownouts and a wide range of voltage and keep the console running. And it's you can actually run a SSL now on a uninterrupted power supply with our
That's fantastic.
UPS. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So long story short, we got to working on it and got to testing it and got to messing around with it, and all I wanted was a reliable power supply, that I didn't have to worry about. And what we got was something that used a lot less energy and sounded better, which was an added bonus that we weren't actually looking for. That it just happened.
That's fantastic.
Which I probably shouldn't tell people, because I should tell people that we designed it specifically to make it sound better.
Yeah,
but we did get lucky. And there's a bunch of people that are using them, including guys that like TLA and Bob Clearmountain and Bob and Tom Elmhurst and guys like that. And Clearmountain actually runs his whole studio on solar now.
He does?
So yeah, he does. It's crazy. So he uses the Atomic because he can turn his console off every night.
That's fantastic. Where's Bob based?
He's in LA.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Same spot.
I've been approached so many times to put solar panels on my studio. I live in Laurel Canyon, so I'm surrounded by trees, so we'd have to get here and start chopping down some trees, which is not something I want to do. I love living up here because of that, because of the trees and stuff. So that's fantastic, and I agree with you. It's been the biggest bane of my life. I've had this power supply rebuilt 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I get that. The problem is like there's a lot of times, actually pretty much every day ending in a Y, that I can't afford to have my console down for an hour, much less like a day or two.
Yeah.
So, so I've been running, I still actually have an Atomic prototype, but it's been running constantly for 2.5 years, 3 years. Great. I've turned the console off hundreds of times, no problems.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
Absolutely
it's pretty neat.
So you do a hybrid system of mixing. So you're mixing in the box and through the console. Could you talk us through your sort of basic principles, the way that you do things?
It's horribly convoluted. Like it's a mess. It's the worst. It's the worst setup ever, but it works really, really well.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, I'm set up so that I can use the console for the stuff that I really love the console for, and for stuff that doesn't matter. Like stacks and stacks of background vocals maybe, or keyboard stuff, or, whatever. Like I can submix it in Pro Tools or what have you. Like I was just doing a project with the LSO, and it's not like I'm going to run 85 channels of analog to submix an orchestra, when you can do that in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
But
just doing exactly the same thing. I'm just working on Christian Castro record, Mexican orchestra. Last night, that's what I was doing till 2 a.m. So I hear you. Yeah, it's so much easier to do all of that in Pro Tools and go down a pair of faders.
Yeah, and you can make stuff sound great in the box. I mean, Sermon's got it nailed. Like he's killer. But I just love, especially for rock drums, especially for like guitars and basses and some vocal stuff and everything. Like I just love the vibe that the console gives it. And you can use parallel compression. You can use the 2-bus compressor. It's great. So I've kind of got it set up so that I can sort of pick and choose depending on the project.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And then with Outboard, what's your sort of go-to things that you love?
I'm kind of addicted to like 1176s and LA3s, and Pultecs are nice. Neve compressors, distressors, of course. Everybody's got to have a distressor.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember working with Brower, and he had a massive rack of distressors, and they're all just going crazy.
Yeah, right.
I think he uses a lot of his in parallel, because he's always got like kick and snare stuff going really super fast. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? I love weird outboard gear, especially with Pro Tools, because you can print it. So I love space echoes and weird old Boss analog delays and spring tanks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's so much gear out there.
Yeah, I know.
And I've owned most of it, and you just kind of gravitate toward certain stuff, and you don't gravitate toward other stuff. And I just keep experimenting, trying to find something that makes something a little bit better. But man, over and over, all the old stuff just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
I think the random. I'll give you my opinion. I won't go on for too long, but I have a crappy old Baldwin upright. And I did a Marc Broussard record a couple of years ago, and we wrote 4 songs. And, Mark is an amazing singer. And we ended up using the crappy piano. And the crappy piano's been on so many records. And it needs tuning, definitely. And a couple of the keys don't work properly. And I thought it was a cool vibe, and was always going to be this lo-fi thing. And now it actually is almost on everything I do, that if I'm doing some heavy rock guitars and I want to add some chords behind it, I just use that. And I started realizing my crappy old piano is my crappy old piano. Now, you and me both can go and open up a virtual piano and get the world's greatest Bechstein, Bosendorfer, Steinway piano sound. But the problem is so can everybody else on the planet.
Yep.
But nobody has my crappy old piano, nobody has your piano, nobody has your collection of gear, nobody has your ears. These are, I just started realizing, I think that's why we're all gravitating towards, at least in my humble opinion, of things that are very unique, because in a digital world, everything can be so perfect. So the random is what our ears, sprick up to. And that's the humanity as well. When you hear a performance, I was talking to Tony Franklin yesterday, and Tony, he plays bass on those Experience Hendrix tours and does, he plays with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, but obviously he was in the Firm with Jimmy Page, and we both said you could listen to one bar of Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, Peter Green, Jeff Beck, even Eddie Van Halen, one bar of any of those guitar players, or not even guitar players, drummers, Keith Moon, John Bonham, Ringo Starr, a bar, and you knew instantly who it was. Mm-hmm. And you know where I'm going, unfortunately. Now with drummers and the technology to correct and make everything sound amazing, which we have to do at times and is the best thing for songs quite often. But what is unfortunately doing is making it sound like whether it is or not, the same session player could play on every track. He might be or he might not be. So
Addictive Drummer is playing on every track.
Yeah, and I'm just as guilty of doing it because I have a small drum room, so sometimes I'm putting in those same generic samples, but I'm taking my small drum room and turning it into a huge room by the use of samples. So I mean, I'm not being critical because there's a means to an end, and there's just only so much you can do. And if you're a kid up and coming, if you're making a great sounding record, then you're making a great sounding record no matter how it comes out. But I think what's interesting about your Little Big Town experience and the Chris Stapleton and the Adele stuff is that we're all human beings, we're organic living people, and I think we identify more with that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's also the challenge of constantly getting better. It's very easy to just say, oh, well, this is good enough. I hate good enough.
Yeah.
I hate good. I want it to be interesting. I want it to be better. Like, can it be a little bit better, a little bit better? And forcing yourself into corners is a really good way to make something that's unique and interesting, as opposed to just a demo.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, right now, demos are masters. They can be. They sound great, you know. But what makes it different than the other 300 demos? So yeah, that's I'm totally with you, especially on uprights. I have an old Iverson Pond. We actually dragged it to Blackbird for a record that we were doing because it had the ones there were too nice. Yeah, you know, we need something screwed up.
Yeah, yeah, something that's just unique that only you have.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that gets all the musicians in a different mindset too. And that, I mean, that's why I bring drums to sessions. I bring old guitars. I bring a ton of amps, you know, because especially in Nashville, we have so many amazing players and they have so much great gear that it's really easy for them to be like, yeah, well, flip this or flip that or flip that. But I come in with these old weird, you know, Watkins amplifiers and stuff that makes really crazy sounds. And it gets everybody to kind of take a step back from what's normal and try something new, and that's just, I love that.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Do you how do you feel I know this is a really generic question, but what's your sort of philosophy? Is that ultimately, are you looking to inspire to create great performances? You know, I mean, really, that's obviously what was great about the records we've been name checking is, you know, the Little Big Town and the Chris Stapleton, etc. The reason why those records I think have been so successful is because you do hear inspired performances from the artists. Is there a process you do? Like you go, oh, I'll try this, I'll try that. I know that, you know, that's probably oversimplifying. But
well, I just want to be an enabler, you know?
Okay, that's good.
I want to, in the best and worst sense of the word. Aaron Sterling's going to walk in and almost any drum kit that he plays is going to be awesome because Aaron's incredible, you know? So it's really fun to throw some weird stuff in there because he's not afraid of putting up like crash cymbals for hi-hats and like turning drums upside down, doing all this cool stuff. And, you know, that's when the other players on the session see that, then they're like, oh, well, I'm free to like step outside the boundaries a little bit. And if you enable them by making sure that the bass tone is really cool and it's really fast and it's not bogging the session down and everyone gets inspired, then that's me doing my job, I think. Playing it safe is boring too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we all got into music because we love music. All the peripheral stuff sort of comes afterwards, but when you're a little kid and you throw on the headphones, you're inspired and you're just like, what is this? I want to be involved in this. And music, especially when we were kids, was only an audio experience. You know,
totally.
MTV was an 80s thing. When I was a little kid, there was no MTV. Not little kid, when I first discovered music. And even then, my parents didn't have any satellite or anything. We didn't have MTV. I don't even think it came into England until the early 90s anyway.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So it was a purely audio experience.
Yeah, that's true. Interesting.
Yeah, so the excitement and everything has to be created in the audio world. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you.
Likewise.
You're going back to mixing? You're going to do some more? What have you got up on the console, you said?
This is that project that we cut on 2-inch, like all live. So that's...
Oh, wow.
I'm splitting time between that and a Disney project that is like the LSO and a big choir and about, 150 tracks of pop production. So it's...
Wow.
I know, it's crazy, right? It's a fun dichotomy.
Yeah, I hear you. I had Tony Franklin come in yesterday morning to cut bass on a blues rock record in the morning, and then the whole rest of the day up until 2 a.m. I was mixing a Christian Castro Latin record that I cut with live strings. It's wonderful. It's what we get to do. We are blessed to be able to like balance this stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, it's fantastic. Keeps you sharp. Yeah, exactly. And I love the blurring of the lines. I love that, you're there you are. And you're probably bringing so much more to the plate that you're sitting there mixing the London Symphonic or the London Symphony Orchestra, which is arguably one of the greatest orchestras in the whole world. You're mixing
Cut it
that.
Abbey Road, naturally.
Yeah, Cut at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
There you are, like, so probably like the best engineers with the best musicians in the best room, blah, 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 all of the things. And then you're going to a 2-inch limited amount of tracks.
Yeah.
But they, in a strange way, make perfect sense, because here's one once that somebody said to me, I won't say who it is, and I won't say who the producer or the mixer is. But this mixer once said to me that the producer had come to him and he was mixing a vocal, like a beautiful girl vocal, with limited instruments like acoustics and a couple of other things. And the producer came to him with a very successful sounding punk pop record. And he put it on and played it to him. He said, "Oh, listen to this song." And the mixer's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I want that same edge that you hear in that pop punk record on this girl record." And he said to me he was a little confused by it. And at the same time, I was like, yeah, but I kind of get it. I understand what he's trying to say, because it's like that, you know, just what is it that makes this exciting? It's like, is it just like some kind of air, and is there some kind of, in a strange world, because the messenger is so much more important than the message most of the time. So if this is a guy that I respect, or a girl, an artist that I respect, and they're telling me something, I need to understand what it is they mean.
Absolutely.
Because I can, in a strange way, understand what that means. You know, because even though you may be doing, I don't know what your instrumentation is, but let's just say it's kick, snare, hi-hat, stand-up bass, acoustic guitar and vocal, that can still be punk rock.
Sure. Absolutely. That would be really fun too.
Yeah, exactly. It could still just kind of have a dangerous edge, even with a jazz-ish kind of folky setup. And I think that's what I love about mixing. That's what I love about mixers. I love about what you bring to it. What all the great mixers can do is that they can take like my work and do more of it and then just twist it. And I think the reason why people come back to you is because they know that you're going to do something more than they envisaged. Something comes back and it's exciting.
Yeah, well, let's hope so.
Well,
from your mouth to God's ears.
Well, it seems to be working for you quite nicely at the moment, Reid.
It does. I'm very fortunate.
Well, wonderful. Look, thanks ever so much. I'm sorry, everybody, the connection's been so bad, and I think I've been waffling a little bit more to fill up some time with the connection. I apologise for that. God bless internet here. AT&T. What? As I said that, you froze.
Yeah, right. They know. They're listening right now.
Yeah, like they really care. Oh well. Well, wonderful. Thanks ever so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to hit you up about Atomic, and I'm definitely going to hit you up about the Focusrite.
Yeah, do it. Totally.
Awesome, mate. Okay, everybody, please, as ever, leave questions and comments below. Subscribe. Go to the YouTube channel. Go to Produce Like a Pro and sign up for the email list, and you get a whole bunch of free stuff. So thanks, Reid. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Warren. Good talking to you.
Good to talk to you.